Alrighty, hey NFL football fans, welcome to this week of NFL Football Talk. This is an Inside Sports production. I'm your host, Charles E. Smith Jr., and we're going to go ahead and start breaking it down already up to week 12 of football here. So let's go ahead and get right into it. As you know, I don't work alone. I do work with only the best, and sorry I missed everybody the last couple of weeks, but we're back and we're going to hit it hard today. None other than Chris Lardieri. You follow him on Twitter at Chris L Sports, and if you don't, shame on you. Shame on you, because you're missing a lot of good stuff. Chris, what's happening?
Charles, thank you for that scolding, and the support is always greatly appreciated.
All right, so, well, let's take a look here, man. A bunch of crazy stuff here happening, and first off, some good news for the Cleveland Browns, who are normally the laughingstock of the NFL, but good season. They're 6-4, and they get Josh Gordon back this week.
Yeah, I think he could have a huge impact. I know those of us out in fantasy football land have had this on the radar for a while, but a team that, while they've been playing well, has had some issues passing the ball. I know Brian Hoyer had more incompletions and completions, which is unheard of in the NFL this past week. So I think Gordon will be a welcome addition for a team that really is a bunch of journeymen and no-names at the wide receiver position. And let's not forget, this guy was one of the, if not the top receiver statistically in the NFL last year.
Yep, exactly. And you know what? What about the situation in Pittsburgh? You know, we got to kind of talk about that. I mean, Le'Veon Bell, in the midst of rushing for 204 yards against the Titans, and his teammate, they were kind of splitting time as the season started. But really, LeGarrette Blount was going to be the backup. And it became pretty clear in this game. So from what I hear, he was basically, by the time the team left the field, he was showered and dressed and heading out of the stadium.
Yeah, I give the credit to the Steelers and Mike Tomlin for cutting bait on him. I mean, the guy's had issues before in the past, like you had mentioned in our pre-show meeting. He punched a player when he was at Oregon and playing Boise State. He got run out of Tampa Bay. Had a great playoffs with New England last year, and Belichick still couldn't tolerate his attitude. Like we said, I mean, either a guy gets straightened out or there's only one possible destination for him, and that's the Oakland Raiders.
Exactly. But you know what? Let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers here for a little bit, because when we look at, you know, the offense coming into play here, Bell coming into his own, and then you got Antonio Brown becoming a top-flight wide receiver there as well. But when you think about it, they've had those injuries on defense with Polamalu being out and with Ike Taylor being out. But if you'd think maybe if Pittsburgh, if they can keep themselves in the hunt here, sneak into the playoffs, you know, they'd have two veteran players who are kind of rested going into the most important games of the season.
Yeah, and we beat this drum every year around this time as we get ready to carve up the turkey. You and I say it's the healthiest team that wins, and sometimes in an odd way it's better to have your injuries in October and November. Guys get healed, they come back fresh. It's almost like early September for them. So I think that could help. You look at the resurgence of the unretired James Harrison on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, who would have thought he'd be contributing like he was? And then on offense, you know, everyone was up in arms when they let Mike Wallace go, but the Steelers do this year after year. They let receivers go, they let key players go, whether it be on a linebacker or a receiver, and they draft well. And you've got Martavius Bryant, who's really coming into his own. Antonio Brown, who people didn't think could step up for Mike Wallace, is now arguably the top receiver in the NFL. So they reload. And now with Le'Veon Bell really hitting stride, I mean, they're offensively going to pose a lot of challenges for opposing defenses, because you've got Roethlisberger throwing 6 touchdowns one week and then Bell running for over 200. I mean, they're going to have nice balance heading into December.
Yeah, most definitely. And then, you know, what about another team, though? And I was shocked to see, okay, I understand the Rams, they can beat good teams whenever they want. They just struggle against the mediocre and the bad teams, but they've already knocked off Seattle, they've knocked off San Francisco. They added the head of the Denver Broncos to that list now, but beating them 22-7, that was the thing. The Broncos only putting up 7 points, and in the process, though, the injuries mounting for Denver. Monty Ball, who was, you know, barely kind of starting to get into his own maybe a month or two ago, but he aggravates that groin injury. He's out. Julius Thomas now maybe out for a little bit, and Emmanuel Sanders, who's just got crushed trying for that leaping reception. He's in the concussion protocol right now, so he's probably not going to be playing this week as well. So Denver started off well, but now, we talk about the health and everything, and key pieces are starting to fall apart for them.
Yeah, definitely. And the Rams' defense is very underrated, and you make a great point that they seem to get up for the tough teams. This is a team that rushes the passer, hits. I mean, even when Sanders was in the game, he had a nice touchdown catch, but basically they let Manning dink and dunk all over the field. He threw for almost nearly 400 yards,
right,
but couldn't get in the end zone. But Jeff Fisher had a good game plan for them. But yeah, getting back to Denver, like we said, could this be injuries at the worst possible time? Hard to say. I mean, Wes Welker hasn't been the same. So really, when you look at that, and with Julius Thomas out, who's Pete and got the throw to, I mean, Demaryius Thomas is great, but if you key on him, there aren't a lot of guys that can beat you in that lineup right now. And they're down to their third and fourth string running back to boot, with Ronnie Hillman still out.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's going to be tough. And the other thing we talked about was when you look at all these teams, even if we go in the AFC and the NFC, every team kind of has a little bit of weakness here and there. And like we talked about St. Louis being able to beat all the better teams in the league, you look at the Steelers, who are playing pretty good football, but 2 of their 4 losses came to the Jets and to the Buccaneers. So they have their times of playing really badly as well. There's only one team, though, that keeps on doing it week after week, and that is the Arizona Cardinals, whether it's Carson Palmer or Drew Stanton, as we found out against the Lions this weekend. The Arizona Cardinals just keep getting it done somehow.
Yeah, absolutely, and you saw them firsthand. Lucky you. You got to see a nice win down there in the desert. But, yeah, I mean, I've been saying this for a while. This really speaks to the job that Bruce Arians has done, and the GM, Klein. Just a phenomenal job. Because, look, every team has had injuries, but the Cardinals have had injuries, and guys just step in and take over. You look at John Brown, the receiver from Pittsburgh State, and not in Pennsylvania, but Kansas, steps up, has been making big catches. You look on the defensive side of the ball, they've lost a lot of guys, and guys just step up. And Patrick Peterson's the one constant there, and you saw him shut down Megatron this weekend. And, I think if he played in a major market, he could have the potential to be the next Deion Sanders. But down there in Arizona, I don't want to say he kind of gets overlooked, but maybe this 9-1 start, and inevitably what it looks like, all things being equal, a playoff run for the Cardinals. Maybe people will see what a tremendous defensive player he really is. I know Richard Sherman doesn't agree, but I think he's great.
Well, I think Richard Sherman enjoys that little war of words that they have. But, I look at the way that the Cardinals are built. And one thing that they've done, though, if we look at it, they went to the Super Bowl with Ken Wisenhunt as the head coach. They went there. Well, we're not going to say we're not going to put them in the Super Bowl already this year. But Bruce Arians and the whole thing, and I know this is going to irk some Ravens and Browns fans and some others, but they pluck coaches off of that Steelers coaching tree, and they have some good success there in the desert.
Absolutely. Wisenhunt did a really nice job there. They nearly won the Super Bowl. Everyone talks about the Belichick tree. You make a great point. That Steelers tree has some really good pedigree there, and maybe that'll be the new trend heading into the off season of 2015. We've got to get someone who ties to the Steelers.
Okay, and then what about that, let's talk a little bit about that NFC South. I mean, Drew Brees and his New Orleans Saints and the Atlanta Falcons, now they're locked in mortal combat with records of 4-6, leading the division. What do you make of all this?
I think that it'll put the 2010 NFC West to shame when the Seahawks won with a 7-9 record. There is I say a very good chance that a 6-10 team could win that division. It just seems you look at the Saints; they don't even want to win at home anymore. The Falcons, I refuse to believe they're contenders. As long as Mike Smith's coaching that team and Matt Ryan's quarterbacking it, I know they're going to slip up at some point. But yeah, when you think about it, one of these teams is only going to be able to slip up twice to get to 8-8, and I don't see that happening down the stretch, especially since they're all going to start getting into divisional matchups heading into December. So yeah, this could be really, really ugly, but yet historic.
And let's talk about one of the teams in there that has fallen from grace, and that is the Carolina Panthers. I think they're sitting at 3-5-1 right now, and they've lost, if I'm not mistaken, 4 games in a row? 5 in a row? Something like that. But what do you make of Cam Newton's boys? And then you had Jason Avant, one of the wide receivers. He criticized the offensive game plan, and they reacted to it by releasing him just yesterday. So Carolina Panthers look like they're in some kind of disarray here.
Yeah, on the one hand, I really can't fault Avant, but at the same time, I know how it is with the NFL. You look at LeGarrette Blount's out of work, too. But what's ironic is that I don't think he said anything far worse than our buddy RG3 keeps intimating in Washington about the game plan and his new coach there. But I guess Carolina's got a zero-tolerance policy for outspokenness. That said, I'm not surprised. The Panthers won the division. They're playing a first-place schedule. They did absolutely nothing to improve themselves on the offensive side of the ball. Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams seem like they've been around for 12 years with that team. Maybe they'll dust off Deshaun Foster at this rate. And they let receivers go. You look at Brandon LaFell, who they thought was washed up, having a nice season in New England. Drafting Kelvin Benjamin's nice, but can you name anyone else on that team that can catch the ball other than Greg Olsen, who's a tight end, by no means a Gronkowski? And, ultimately some of the blame's got to fall on Newton. And I was thinking about this the other day. RG3 deserves the criticism that's coming his way, but I think, relatively speaking, Cam Newton seems to get a pass compared to RG3. I don't know if it's because he doesn't do Subway commercials, but this is a guy who everyone raved about and what a leader and this and that, but he's not showing it this year, and this is a year where they could sneak in and take that division with, let's say, an 8-7-1 record, and he's just not stepping up.
Yeah, that's true. And you know what? Let's talk about RG3 a little bit because, and I just say it again, and I may sound like a broken record a little bit, but I was really kind of impressed with him in his rookie season. But I think that it was, like I said, it was about the defenses not knowing the spread offense and the read option that well, and now they do. And now he's declining. But it's really distressing to me, though, are the things that he says now, as though truly he's untouchable. I just don't like the attitude that I see from him, and criticizing his teammates and things like that. So you just wonder. I think the war between he and Jay Gruden is heating up now, and you got to wonder who gets run out of town this time. I mean, is Snyder going to fire Jay Gruden, or is he going to finally look at the common denominator and realize that RG3 is the one who needs to leave town?
Yeah, if this generation's Al Davis were to wake up and listen to his front office, I think he'd stop being buddy-buddy with the franchise quarterback. I mean, that's not good for business, and it doesn't set a good example. And B, you really can't have that. I mean, some of the things he said are bordering on insubordination. To Gruden's credit, I was watching today clips from the recent press conferences this week, and he's given it back to RG3 and basically saying, like, I'd say to my kids, don't you parent, I'm the parent, and kind of putting him in his place to the point where RG3's channeling his inner Belichick and just keeps repeating about how he's getting ready for the San Francisco game.
Right.
But yeah, I think, at this point, you keep your mouth shut. I mean, you're digging your hole deeper. And the one thing that's going to loom large over the Redskins this offseason is I believe Griffin's owed something like a $16 million bonus come May. And I probably would put good money on the fact that he won't be receiving that from Washington. And look, the guy got banged up and hurt his knee, and there was a lot of controversy around that. But at the end of the day, it's not like it's Dan Marino coming off knee surgery and he's got an established career and is a great passer. I just don't get the sense of entitlement, and that could really hurt him. You look at a guy like Mark Sanchez, who wasn't really critical and kept his mouth shut and was in a bad situation. Still got released, ended up getting another job with the Eagles, and he's starting. But Griffin could be ruining his future job prospects with what he's doing.
Right, and you think about with Griffin too, not just his play on the field, which it's one thing if you want to be a great player and run your mouth, but he's not getting it done during the games, and he's running his mouth. And the rumblings about him and his teammates not really being on the same page, his teammates not liking him and things like that, are starting to heat up. And then him saying, like he said to a reporter who asked him about it, and he shot back at the reporter and says, well, do you like everyone you work with? Which, I mean, that's a pretty good question, but you know what I mean here.
Yeah, it shouldn't be said.
Right. Okay, and then, to the great quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, fantastic, still getting it done and locked in Mortal Kombat there in the AFC North, or NFC North, rather, with the Lions. So, what can you say about Rodgers, though? Rodgers, best QB in the league? Got to be all around.
Yeah, I mean, pound for pound, I think so. I know Tom Brady's making a good case for
Most definitely
him to still be number one. So I think at this point it's got to be between those two guys. I know Peyton's always there, but I think you look at what Rodgers has to work with compared to the weapons that Peyton has. I'd have to lean towards Rodgers. You look at it in week 2, all of Wisconsin was up in arms because of that horrendous performance against the Lions. He goes on sports talk radio there and spells out relax for those who don't know how to spell it, and everything's been peachy keen ever since. So yeah, I mean, I'm really impressed, especially when you consider Eddie Lacy hasn't been the running back that he was last year, and they've had their fill of injuries as well. It's not like they've got the greatest defense, and what he's done has been really impressive, and going to be an interesting matchup, the rematch with the Lions. I think with all the marbles on the line, I don't know about you, but I think I'd take my chances with Rodgers over Stafford, that's for sure.
Yeah, and just like when we talk about the established quarterbacks with the young upstarts, and the way that, Tom Brady and the Patriots, they took care of business against the Indianapolis Colts this weekend, and that's one of my quarterbacks of the future is Andrew Luck, but I think he gets these big games, and we can tell he's not quite there yet. And also, with the Colts, we look at the injuries, and Ahmad Bradshaw, broken ankle, so he's going to be done probably for the rest of the season here.
Yeah, and then the guy who's backing him up and who was once a starter is Trent Richardson. So you know what? I agree with you. I think Luck's going to be great. I think he may eventually surpass Rodgers at some point, but not with this talent. I mean, I know he's got some nice receivers around him, but they got a banged-up offensive line, and I don't know if Joe Montana could have done well with Trent Richardson in the backfield. They probably would have done well because he's Joe Montana, but I don't think he'd be winning 4 Super Bowls with that guy behind him.
That's true. Trent Richardson is no Ricky Waters. Let's go ahead and say that.
An underrated running back that people forget about.
Just like Roger Craig, but let's not go off on a Niners tangent here because we'll be here all night. Okay,
Wendell Tyler.
With the football with the suitcase handle sewed onto it? Classic. All right, so, let's go ahead and we're going to get into the picks here in just a moment. But, of course, the decision came down from the NFL regarding Adrian Peterson. So after being on the commissioner's exempt list for the past, 9-10 weeks here, now they finally say they're going to discipline him under the league's personal conduct policy. So he'd been out 10 weeks with pay. Now he's going to be suspended the rest of 2014 without pay, which is the last 6 games here. No decision will be made on Peterson until April the 15th of 2015. And Goodell is saying that they're going to look at how he's doing in counseling and all the personal improvement things before they even consider reinstating him. So at this point, there's no guarantee he's even coming back to the NFL. But DeMaurice Smith and the NFLPA say that they're ready to go to court over it if Peterson is not reinstated. Mr. Lardieri, you have to make sense of this whole mess here for us.
I'm still trying. While on the one hand, I think it's good that the NFL came to a speedy conclusion on this. Still scratching my head when you look at the Ray Rice mess, which we'll address momentarily,
right,
and how that was botched and how he got little or no suspension, but yet Adrian Peterson's run for the rest of the year. Look, I don't agree with what Adrian Peterson did. I think it's terrible, but the fact of the matter is he didn't kill anyone. He was found guilty of a crime, and yet you look in previous years, guys like Dante Stallworth and Leonard Little, drunk driving, mowing people down, killing them, and they're back in the league with a proverbial slap on the wrist. You look at Ray Lewis and everything that happened with him. True, he was never convicted of a crime, but let's face it, serious stuff, and there was a plea involved to which I don't know the extent of, but another example of looking the other way. So I really, really, really think had this happened before the Ray Rice thing, or if the Ray Rice thing was handled correctly, I don't think this suspension would have been as severe as it was. Now, The only question I have is why April, or do they want to make sure Adrian pays his taxes first? That I don't get, but I can't see him not getting reinstated unless he screws up, which, as we all know, could be quite possible. The guy's made some questionable decisions and said some questionable things, so I hope he's on his best behavior for his sake. But I don't think he'll be back in Minnesota that much, I'll say.
Yeah, I think so. And, we look at the Ray Rice thing, which is still hanging out there as to whether or not he's going to be reinstated. And then the other side of it, remember, the NFL is still investigating itself. Now, that was supposed to have been finished by the end of October. I believe they meant October of 2014. So, but they didn't clarify. They just said the end of October. Could have been October of 2015 that they were talking about. But that's still two big things that are on the table that the NFL has to get cleared up.
Yeah, another one of great mysteries, like looking for OJ's bloody glove and the Loch Ness Monster and a few other things. I like how this has been swept under the rug. Mm-hmm. The testimony allegedly has been done and still no resolution. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, people have said, do you think Rice will be reinstated? I don't know, but it's a slippery slope. Another thing, what he did was terrible. The videotape, the cover-up, the whole thing is a complete mess. But at the same time, they gave Rice one suspension, a slap on the wrist, right, and then upped it. And I've got to say, as reprehensible what Ray Rice did and acted that night, I mean, there's got to be due process here. How does a guy go from one little suspension to completely on the verge of being run out of the league, and right, yet we still can't get a resolution on this? I just don't get it. I really find it funny that there have been a lot of smoke and mirrors, and the NFL media machine has kind of let this story go to the back burner, and you and I, the cynics that we are, no good knows behind this. But yeah, it's like you look at last year with Richie Incognito. It seemed like for weeks and weeks and weeks, even after the incident, the interview he did with Jay Glazer, there was still a story about something going on every week, and just radio silence on this. It just
right,
just smells like a CIA type cover up to me. I don't like what's going on. I don't have a good feeling.
And apparently they still haven't been able to trace that phone call that went into their office where all calls are monitored. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on. And
you know what else? I mean, at the very least, shouldn't the NSA probably have a log of this, because they're snooping in on all our calls, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, so checking just a little bit of an update, and this was from within this week and last week, but out for the season injuries. Brandon Albert of the Miami Dolphins, the offensive tackle, Patrick Willis, linebacker for the Niners, and of course we know about Carson Palmer and the ACL, and also Brandon Mebane right there in the middle of the line, the nose tackle for the Seattle Seahawks. He's done, so before we get into the picks, we'll go ahead and consider those things. And
how about Marshawn Lynch? And how about Marshawn Lynch? He just kind of went AWOL. Was there any injury there? He's being Marshawn again.
Marshawn, you mean when he didn't go into halftime, didn't go into the locker room?
Yeah. Did he have like a concussion? He get lost? What
he was
happened?
Getting worked on there on the sideline, so he didn't go in. But see, that's one thing. If you don't want to be a part of things or whatever, or just doing your own thing, but you can do it on the field like Marshawn Lynch, I think you can go ahead and skip a few things and just eat a few Skittles here and there, and nobody really cares about it.
Better than a hot dog like Rick Meyer once did, speaking of Steve Hunt.
All right, so looking at the picks of the week, last week I went 3-3. Mr. Lardieri goes 4-2, so you've got that healthy one-game lead over me right now. You're 38-28, I'm 37-29, but it does show that we're kind of getting this thing under control and not having the atrocious weeks we had when the season started.
Yeah, things have come back to normal, thankfully, because I was about to throw in the towel and just having maybe a monkey throw darts at a board of NFL helmets or something.
All right, so let me go ahead and break down the first game here, and that is those 6-4 Miami Dolphins who really put a hurting on the Buffalo Bills last week, and then Denver, who's kind of limping in, but they are playing at home. They're going to be playing in bad weather. So you got to wonder what the tropical team is going to do there and in that mile-high air. I'm tempted to give the edge here to Denver, but looking at how Miami's defense is playing, and with the lack of a running game for the Broncos, and with Peyton Manning playing in cold weather, I think all those things are going to add up. We're going to have an ugly game, and I think the Dolphins are going to win it. A fairly low-scoring affair, but I got the Dolphins in this game by a slim margin over Denver in Mile High.
I agree with you in the sloppiness and the ugly part. At the end of the day, I really can't see Denver having 2 atrocious weeks in a row, especially with this one being at home. Even with the injuries, knowing Peyton Manning, I'm sure he'll find a way to win this game. And C.J. Anderson, Juwan Thompson might not be the greatest running backs, but they're serviceable. And I just really, you look at that team from South Beach coming into cold weather, high altitude like that. Ultimately, that's why I'm siding with Denver.
All right. And you know what? I'm tempted to, maybe a little bit of my heart might have got into that pick, but I'm going to go ahead and stick with what I said there.
Sometimes those are the best ones.
Yep. Okay, so next game, Cleveland Browns, the puzzling Cleveland Browns who, beat good teams, lose to bad teams. They're in Atlanta to play against the Falcons, who are a bad team leading their division, though. Break that one down for us.
Puzzling to me when you consider both of these teams are in contention to win their divisions. And, looking back historically, the last time this may have potentially happened was a Brian Sipes, Steve Bartkowski matchup. But I'm sure I'm dating a lot of people here. But, like I said earlier, I don't believe in Atlanta. I don't trust Ryan completely. I don't like Mike Smith as a coach. Nothing personal, just as a coach.
Yeah, right.
And I think with Josh Gordon coming back, I think Hoyer will get back on track. And I think they beat the topsy-turvy, schizophrenic, whatever adjective you'd like to use to describe the Falcons, because I think they're pretty much a fraud in the South, and I'm going with the Browns.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and agree with you pretty much for 90% of all the reasons you just gave.
And what's the 10% that's not?
I don't know if I trust Brian Hoyer on the road in Atlanta to win a big game like that. That's the only thing.
I thought that too, and I picked the Bengals that week, and I've learned my lesson.
Yep, but I'm going with Cleveland as well. So next game, Detroit Lions coming off that loss in the desert to the Arizona Cardinals. They're in New England to play the Patriots. And looking at from what's on the Weather Channel, I think there's going to be inclement weather there in New England. So, we talk about the coaches, the intangibles. I think everything leads to, and look at how New England's been playing. They've been on a roll lately. I just don't see them losing this game at home in bad weather against a dome team. I got New England all the way on this one.
Yeah, completely agree. You saw Detroit in the desert on grass, and nice, comfortable 72 degrees. Can you imagine them in Foxborough on a windy, cold, and snowy day? Gotta agree with you there. I just love the way the Patriots offense has been clicking. We've got the once failed stand-up comedian Jonas Gray is now the new greatest running back in New England. I think that adds a valuable weapon to the running back by committee that Bill Belichick loves to use. And frankly, I have that funny feeling again that the Lions slide has started. Even when they beat the Dolphins and a tough win at home at Ford Field, kind of sloppy. And I think just don't know why I have this feeling that the lug nuts are loosening and the wheels may be coming off at Detroit.
The lug nuts are loosening. That sounded almost like Chick Hearn,
Wow, that's high praise. He and I are so much alike.
Yep, there you go. I didn't know you were 80 years old. Anyways, okay.
Or a Lakers homer.
Okay, so next game though, St. Louis Rams 4-6 in San Diego to play the Chargers. Now the Rams beat good teams. The Chargers have lost 3 straight, but the Chargers are technically still a good team. The question is, are the Chargers actually good enough for the Rams to beat? So you go ahead and break that one down for us.
That's a good question. The Chargers, are they a good enough team? I really had a hard time going back and forth in this game. I think ultimately what's gotten me to side with the Rams here is, like I mentioned earlier, I really like their defense and the fact that I think similarly to the Lions, that the Chargers are beginning their annual skid. And watching that game last week, playing a winless Raiders team and only putting up 13 points.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, the Raiders have a decent defense, but the Raiders by no means are the Arizona Cardinals or Seattle Seahawks. I just think Phillip Rivers is reverting back to his mean, and don't know why, but I think the Rams, from what I've understood from their brain trust, consider the Chargers a good team because they're still in playoff contention, so that means they have to beat them.
All right, and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and go with you on that because, Rivers took a bad hit last week, and so he was laying on the ground like he really needed, some type of like a paramedics to get him off the field. And then Gates says that he has a serious rib injury, and then they refute that. They say Gates doesn't know what he's talking about. So bottom line is, Phillip Rivers is hiding an injury, and it's not letting him throw the ball the way he needs to, and that's going to spell trouble because, as you said, the Rams' defense is good. So I'm going to go ahead with the St. Louis Rams as well.
Good logic.
Okay, and then now we got the big one here. Division rivals and everything. Arizona Cardinals at 9-1 in Seattle at CenturyLink Field to play the Seahawks, who are desperate at 6-4. And, well, Arizona, they passed every test. We keep on doubting them, but they're going into Seattle. So I look at the records here. I think Seattle is going to be in pure desperation mode. And I can't see Seattle losing this game at home at this time. So it's not that I don't believe in the 9-1 Cardinals. I just think with this game, it comes down to who wants it more. And when it comes down to that real dogfight, Seattle's going to be able to dig a little bit deeper because of the situation than Arizona. So I like Seattle in this game.
Yeah, I completely agree, and there are a couple reasons I'd like to tack on to that. Well, I have nothing against Drew Stanton. I can't see him going into Seattle with the 12th man against that defense and winning a game. And on top of that, the news today that Larry Fitzgerald didn't practice. Even if he does play, it sounds like he's banged up enough that they're holding him out during the week, which isn't good. And Richard Sherman won't have a problem shutting him down. And I know Fitzgerald hasn't been getting targeted as much, but you still have to account for him when he's on the field, even if he gets decoys. So if he can't go or he's not full speed, I don't think that bodes well for Arizona.
Yep, so we're in agreement there. And then the last game we're going to pick here is Baltimore Ravens bunched up in that AFC North at 6-4 in New Orleans to play the 4-6 New Orleans Saints. And New Orleans no longer invincible at home. They've proven they can pretty much lose anywhere. How do you see this one?
This is another tough one. You've got two teams that I don't know how they're going to show up given week to week. I think ultimately, in my heart of hearts, I can't see the Saints losing 3 consecutive games at home. While the Ravens are a good team and they're in the hunt in the AFC North, I just don't see them beating New Orleans down there. I think this is like the Seahawks. I think this is a team that's in desperation mode. They know that the division is theirs to win, even if it is with a mediocre record. And I just don't see Sean Payton and Drew Brees allowing this to happen. So I think the Saints get off the schneid and start a winning streak at home.
Well, the way I see this one is, I think that Baltimore has a few more weapons here, and I like Steve Smith. I like the Smith boys there to stretch the field on offense. And then on defense, I think that's where it's going to be won. I think that the Baltimore Ravens can dig a little deeper and get this game because they're in, that AFC North is crazy. They got to have this game. The Saints could actually lose this game, go to 4-7, and still be solidly in contention for this division. So when it comes to the desperation part, I like Baltimore. They got the championship pedigree, and I like the Ravens in this game.
It's good that we disagree, Charles. That means someone's going to either take a commanding lead or take over the lead. So dissension is good for our pick segment.
Yeah, exactly, unless there's a tie or something. But anyways, that's not going to happen because Carolina and Cincinnati are not playing each other this week.
Right, we got that one out of the way.
Okay, and before we go ahead and sign off, any final words there, Mr. Lardieri?
As you know, I'm a man of the people, and I talk to football fans in various walks of life. And one consistent thing that I've been talking about recently is the state of NFL announcers. And, as I mentioned to you while you were in Arizona at that fun stadium watching the game, I said the best part about you being there is you didn't have to listen to Chris Myers and Rondé Barber. And I think that just underscores, so some of these, and I understand, like Howard Cosell said, the NFL's got the jockocracy in the media, and you've got to have a former player and or coach doing color commentary. But it's to the point now where even when Joe Buck's doing a game, I sat down Sunday afternoon. I look forward to watching the Packers-Eagles game, and within minutes I realized I thank the good Lord for the mute button. I don't know what it is. You look at like Jim Nantz and Phil Simms. I'm a Giants fan. I like Phil Simms. I just feel like Nantz brings out the worst. And the same with Troy Aikman. And I don't know if I'm the only one who's noticed this. More people seem to be telling me they're using the mute button or trying to fast forward in between plays so I don't have to listen to the babbling. But, you know, this is going to be the old man in me. I miss the days of Madden and Summerall and Merlin Olsen and then Phil Simms later on. And I mean, you look at some of these number two crews. I was talking about this with a coworker. Vern Lundquist used to do NFL games with Dan Fouts. And Vern Lundquist's a great college football announcer now, don't get me wrong. But can you imagine that? This is a guy who was doing like number two, number three games, or even on NBC you had Don Criqui and Bob Trumpy.
Yeah.
What the heck happened to NFL announcers, Charles? Can you tell me?
Yeah, I don't know. It got that's a whole show. Let's just say that. But it has gotten bad, and we won't even talk about the Monday night team with Mike Tirico and John Gruden and it's like as the week goes on, it just gets worse and worse and worse, and then culminates with the horrible broadcast. No matter how good the game may be, but the horrible broadcast of Monday Night Football.
Absolutely, and you know, you and I were texting about this Monday. I actually had to endure that game because there were some fantasy football ramifications for my team, and I am at the point where I really want John Gruden to go back into coaching. I have nothing against the guy. He seems like a nice guy. He knows his football, but just what comes out of his mouth, I have no idea.
Yeah, and you know, all due respect to Jason Witten, but Gruden was babbling on and said that Jason Witten was the best tight end ever to play in the NFL. And I have a problem with that.
Yeah, I think the guy over at CBS named Gonzalez will have a good laugh over that.
Yeah, exactly. As would Shannon Sharp. But anyways, let's go ahead and sign off here, shall we?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks everybody for listening and watching. And remember, follow Chris on Twitter at Chris L Sports. Follow yours truly on Twitter at The Inside Sports. And this is NFL Football Talk, which is an Inside Sports production. Thanks to everyone for watching, and we'll be back next week right here.